Just wait for a minute, we'll get everyone here. Grandma, come in. Come in on this side. Okay, looks like we have everyone here. Thank you for coming to this press conference today. First of all, I want to acknowledge two different families that we have here today. Obviously, Warwick Dunn and his sister Summer, and Warwick's grandmother, who is here. Also, Mr. and Mrs. Wayne Gazzardo are here, and another actual victim who survived one of the murders, Miss Kevin Lee, and she's with us today. We're also fortunate to have 4 of the deputy chiefs of police that are all here today. The chief is out of town, could not make it. From the Sheriff's Association, we have Mike Renazza and Gary Barnett, Doug Hebert, Sheriff Doug Hebert from Allen Parish, Brett Stassi from Iberville, KP Gibson from Acadia, Jason Richardson from DeSoto, our Sheriff Sid Gautreaux. I'm fortunate also to have some brother and sister DAs, Bridget Denvo from St. John, Perry Nicosa from St. Bernard, Bo Dewey from Iberia, St. Martin, and St. Mary, Phil Terrell from Rapides, and also Warren Lampert, his executive director. You know, this is a day that we didn't want to be here and we shouldn't be here. But first I want to talk a little bit about what this petition that we filed is not about. This is not about the governor or any angst toward the governor. It is absolutely surely not about any angst toward the pardon board. We believe and we respect the people on this pardon board as very good folks that we know will make right decisions. What troubles us and what troubles this family is that the nature of how this all evolved. A month and a half ago, we received a phone call saying that, giving us a heads up that 56 petitions for commutation were going to be filed for all death row inmates. We had never heard of this before. We did have somewhat of an idea that maybe something was going on when the governor announced at the last minute of his term, when he's term limited, that he was against and opposed the death penalty. That was surprising because he has never made that statement before. But then when we heard and saw the 56 en masse pleadings that were filed, it was like, how can this happen? Because this is not the procedure. This is the end of the year. These matters are going to be set around Thanksgiving and around Christmas, when these folks are trying to continue to heal after decades and decades. And they were appalled. I can tell you that I received a first phone call from Warwick Dunn because he received a letter from a defendant's lawyer, death row inmate's lawyer that killed his mother, saying that we have hired someone to be your victim's representative and feel free to call them. She's in my office and works in my office. He called me wanting to know what in the hell is going on, and at that point I had not known about the filing. And all the others have received similar letters without any due regard or any heads up to anyone. I can only imagine what went through his mind and his heart when that happened. So when we took a look at the procedures, the first case that came up was a case of a person who's now no longer on the docket. But we knew ahead of time that there were already 440 applications for commutation that had already been set. And their procedures took a minimum of 1 year up to 2 years. And now at this last moment on these June filers for the worst, most heinous violent offenders, that they were going to be put ahead of 440 other people who are actually eligible to be heard for commutation. When we received our first notice of the first individual, we then took action and we notified the board that we were opposed them setting this matter for consideration. We appeared before the board with our staff, and we appeared in writing as well, outlining why they were not eligible for commutation. Basically, bottom line, real simple, is that they do not have a death sentence, none of them. They don't want a death sentence. They not have a date certain. They're not 1 year away from their final conviction. They're now 20 and 30 and multiple years away. That eventually gets them out from the beginning. Going back further, doing more and more research, the lack of notice, the lack of open meetings laws that have been violated just really added to why is this happening this way, out of the ordinary. And then once we had the hearing and the board did the right thing and said, you know what, you're right. They even asked for their own opinion from the attorney generals that represent them, as well as the attorney general that represents the civil division. They came in and said, no, you cannot take these people out of order. You cannot violate the rules. You cannot give them quicker turnaround than anyone else. So they went to executive session. They then reversed that and said, we are taking them off the docket. Within a day, we were told, and you all were told by the news, that all of the 56 petitions were returned back to the death row inmates, the petitioners. Lo and behold, that 2 days, within 24 hours later, the governor sends a letter to the pardon board and says, I would like for you to expedite these, or like for you to hear these, set these for a hearing. And he understands the nature of it. He understands the business that the parole board has to go through. But obviously telling them indirectly, don't worry about following your procedures because it's going to take a year or two and I'll be gone. So the parole board then set these matters for hearing. They set 20. Why did they pick this 20, not some other 20? I have no idea. There's been no explanation for that whatsoever. But two of the families that you see represented here today, their family members have been killed in a very awful way that all of you all are familiar with in Baton Rouge. And this is just not right. It's wrong. It seems to be one man's opinion to try to direct everything into the direction that he would like to go. What also gets us is, we look at the news articles and we talk about death row inmates, and this is death row. This is death row. The death row that these guys have faced are all over the state of Louisiana in little headstones. That's the real death row, and that's who we're here to represent, not only these victims, but the process. We don't contest that the governor has the authority to commute. We don't contest that the parole board has the authority to recommend commutation. We do contest that these folks are not eligible and that the procedures must be followed. And I think that once you take the chance to look at this detailed petition, you will see the multiple violations that we have alleged. We're confident that we will have a permanent injunction within 2 to 10 days. Whenever the court sets this, we're prepared to move forward. There's a lot of discovery that we don't have, that we normally would have had, but we are prepared to go forward. And this is an extremely serious matter. It does not touch on the propriety of the death penalty whatsoever. It's simply the procedure that's being employed on this expedited basis. So, having said a lot, I know that the real people here that you want to hear from are Warwick Dunn and his family, his sister Summer, his grandmother, and Miss Kim Lee, who has survived many shots to her body that night, as well as Mr. Wayne and Carol Gazzardo, who have been really vocal on the death penalty and what's happened to their daughter, and another young man, Mr. Breakwell, who died alongside their daughter. So I'll answer any questions you have or allow you to speak with the family members as they'd like to speak.
Does this injunction only apply to East Baton Rouge inmates or others as well?
So, right, well, we'll see. I think that you may see others may join. But at this point, me as the DA in Baton Rouge, I think that standing is here, East Baton Rouge Parish. And if the procedure is applied for our three, it's the same for any other one, because the same procedures or lack of procedures have been used. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Lafayette Sheriff Mark Garber that is also here. I apologize. But we believe that this matter will be heard, and once you take a look at the pleadings, you'll see how clear this is, and something has caused this to be expedited in an unlawful fashion.
Did I read correctly in the injunction that this applies to 20 of the 55 currently pending up?
So 20 of the 55 or 6 have been given dates, and why those 20, I don't know. Why did we bump? Who did we bump of the 440 to get to those 20? And then when are they going to set the other 36? There's no answer. There's not a rhyme or reason that we know of. They may have an explanation. Again, I want to be real clear that the Pardon Board, executive staff and directors have always been extremely helpful, honest, and open with us, as has been the Parole Board, who are friends and are hardworking individuals. I don't like the position that they've been put in by this. It's got to be gut-wrenching for them as well to have to stand before these folks if they ever get there, which we say they will not because of the legal impediments. But it is what it is at this point.
Is the injunction requesting a halt on the hearings for those 20 or for the
all of them?
East Baton Rouge men?
For all of them, correct.
Do you think the governor's pressuring the parole board?
I don't think there's any doubt by reading the letter after the parole board did what they did, and then he sends that letter, and then within 24 hours or less, it's set back again. It's besides that, you know, look, the parole board and DOC, they had to hire extra. Had to use people in extra time capacity and pay them overtime to come out and try to generate these reports on these individuals that normally take a year to 2 years. So they're working overnight and paying. The other issue is who's paying for these 56 defendants all of this work. I know they're not paying for these folks. They say they're hiring counselors. They don't want their counselors. They want people that understand their situation and stand behind them. So it'll be very interesting. We are proud to represent them, and we look forward to our day in court.
So now that you filed your injunction, can you walk us through what the next step is? And
So it has been assigned to Judge Don Johnson, is what we're told by the clerk's office. And by law, the court has 2 to 10 days to set the matter for a hearing. So we expect that will happen. What we don't know is what position will the board take? Will the board vote on whether they want to oppose this or they agree with it? Who's going to represent them? There's a lot of things that have to happen in a very short period of time. But again, the situation is everything that has been done has been premature without following procedures and laws, and they have to, if they even want to start again, they have to start all over from square one, and that'll be sometime next year or the year after.
Do any of the family members want to talk to us and just walk us through how you guys are doing today and what you make of all of this? You go first.
Well, we've been doing this for 28 years, from appeal after appeal after appeal through the Supreme Courts, all the way up to the Washington Supreme Court. It's all come back the same way. 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the governor did this, we went before the judiciary, House of Representatives, because they brought a bill up to cancel the death penalty. And we went in and we fought it tooth and toe, been doing it every year for the last 28 years, and we beat them. And the governor didn't like it. And then all of a sudden, this is when this started happening, time over time again. So you can take it for what it's worth, but yeah, I think the governor's in the middle of this. We always thought that you separated state from church. Undoubtedly, he's not. From what I understand, he was at Angola yesterday with a bunch of bishops and everything out, trying to get out in front of this. I just don't know where he's coming from. He seems more for the crooks and the thugs than he is for the victims.
In your opinion, how do you think this leaves his legacy on his way out of all this?
You don't want to ask me that, son. I don't need to answer that.
Appreciate that. You know, I've been dealing with this for 30 years, and to receive a letter about commuting sentences for individuals who committed heinous crimes, to me is disrespectful, and it really affects all of us, all the families who have individuals that are in prison. They're still alive. My mom has been gone for 30 years. 30 years. She would never be able to meet her grandkids. You know, she missed all the experiences of the things that I've done in my life. I mean, she's not here to experience that. And this guy's been in prison for, 28 years, 30 years or so, and he's waking up every day, eating 3 meals, breathing, laughing. He's able to pick up the phone and call his family members. We can't do that. It's disrespectful. And just think that he's using taxpayers' dollars to, every day, using their money, living, eating. And what do we get? We get the governor thinking that because of his religious beliefs that they should be commuted. No, I don't agree with that. And I don't think he would ever understand. But when it hits your front door, then he's going to understand. I mean, that's just the realities of life. But, for me, it is important that this is just justice, right? And I'm still not sure why he's still alive. But, if that's the case, they need to also give my family all the money that they spent on these individuals in prison for all these years. They need to give that to my family as well. They need to, pay us for, being able to have pain and suffering, dealing what we've been dealing with. And I think they should do that with all of the families. I mean, it is disrespectful. It's something that, I can go on and on and on. And, it's just disheartening to see that we've had to come this far. I had to come into Baton Rouge, and I don't even live here anymore, to be able to, speak and say how I feel, right? This is not what it's about, and it shouldn't be about this. It should be about doing the right thing, and the right thing is, making sure those guys don't have one opportunity to ever get out, but they should not be alive, period. My sister. Oh, yes, ma'am. I would be comfortable moving forward, but at the same time, I want justice as well. Again, my mom was a police officer killed in the line of duty. And you have a police officer, and all these police officers here, if we don't show justice to law enforcement, anybody anywhere can do anything and don't suffer any consequences other than I'm gonna just spend life in prison. How is that fair? How are you protecting law enforcement who's supposed to be protecting all of us? So for me, the justice needs to happen, and it needs to happen ASAP.
Do you think the governor cares about justice?
Well, the only thing I know the governor cares about is his religion. And religion has nothing to do with right and wrong. Okay? I went to Catholic high school. I understand. That has nothing to do with right and wrong. And the governor, he should just step out of the way and move on so we can just continue moving forward. You want to say something? This is my sister, by the way.
With this whole thing, I don't think anybody knows the impact that it has on us. We have kids now, and for our kids that want to meet their grandmother, and we have to tell stories about of our mother, and to see them, they like, can we see our grandmother? We have to take a flight or a 7-hour drive to drive up to San Francisville so they can see a tombstone that can't speak back to them. The impact that this have on us not only is a revolving door that we never can heal from. I always ask people, how can you heal a broken heart?
Kevin?
I too agree with Summer and Moore very much. The impact that this has put on all of our lives. I can't imagine what they're dealing with, not having their mother and being able to see them grow up and be the people that they are today. The torment that it brought to my life and the darkness is undescribable. I think this is wrong. I don't think that they should be allowed another chance, because I never will have another chance to never relive what happened. I was next to Betty when she took her last breath. They will never have the opportunity to have their mother with them. And I agree that we need to move forward and do what was designed to happen. It'll be 31 years in January 7th, and this is just wrong. It's wrong for all the families to have to continuously live through this. I got a letter just like Warwick did, and I thought, what the heck is going on? I didn't know. It scared me. Then I was reached out by a reporter, so it was like I was blindsided by a lot of things, and it's something that we want to never forget, unfortunately, but put behind us and move on.
I just want to say one thing. I remember years ago, Kevin Broomfield filed an injunction to go to the Supreme Court, and they ruled, and his argument was because he was mentally retarded. When you think about it, He wasn't mentally retarded when he was planning anything. But I get Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, praising the fact that, Warrick Dunn has been successful, or he's been able to help people. That's not he has no idea of anything that I've ever gone through, right? The impact that, losing my mother, and I just turned 18 years old 2 days before that. The responsibility that left on me, the life that I didn't have early on because I was depressed, stressed, all of the mental health aspects that I had to go through just to be stable, be sane. And then you got a Supreme Court justice saying that, hey, good has come out of this. No, good hasn't come out of it, period. I've been able to bless individuals who have the same dream my mom had of owning a home. But I have to live out my mom's dream by watching other people. I wasn't able to provide anything for my mother, but thank God my grandmother's still here. My brothers and sisters, we're able to stay connected, but not everybody is going to react to situations like that. And to use being mentally retarded, that is disgusting. You weren't doing that, you weren't mentally retarded when you were planning it. And to have Clarence Thomas doing a dissent, I just don't like it. It's disrespectful. And it's rude, and this is the first time I've been able to say anything about it because he's not walking in my shoes. He's not going to understand my journey. Again, if it comes to your doorstep, your perspective is going to change. Period. It's the experience that we all go through that really gives us the perspective of moving forward in life.
I'd like to say one more thing. One of the first things they bring up in all this is race. I can guarantee you, him, me, everybody else has had murder. It's not the first thought that comes to your mind. Was it a white man that killed my mother? Was it a black man that killed my daughter? Race has nothing to do with this, nothing at all.
I have Lauren Lampert's here from the Director of Louisiana DA's Association. He had a question about other cases in other jurisdictions. Maybe you can answer your question. Lauren.
Thank you, Hillar. And look, to the victims' families, you understood the sacrifice they made. You understood, you heard where this rocked their world, that just when they get to be able to discuss their loved ones at Christmas and remember the fond times, this is thrust right back in front of them, and they have the potential of spending this Christmas battling to keep justice in place. With respect to the additional filings, we anticipate there will be additional filings next week in all of the cases that are pertinent, or at least most of them. We are obviously supporting the efforts of the East Baton Rouge District Attorney's Office in these two cases, and we will monitor the progress. We have DAs from around the state here today who have cases that are coming up in the next week or so. And so we expect there will be another round of filings next week, and each case kind of stands on its own merits and has a lot of similarities as well. So,
I have a question for you, Lauren and Hillar, as well. Legally, the injunction you filed today, is this a question of the board adhering to its own procedures and rules, or is it a question of the state law's authority over those procedures and rules and its ability to draw them itself?
The answer to that is yes, James. Okay. It brings in the statutes that come into play, the open meetings. It also deals with the process of setting a case for hearing. That is set by statute. It also deals with the violation of their own properly promulgated rules, such as Hillar mentioned. There's no way to read the rule that says you can't file this in a capital case. It has to be filed within 1 year of the disposition of the final direct appeals. There's no other way to read that. It's absurd to say it means anything else other than that. They clearly disobeyed their own rules. They have the right to change their rules, but that is a process as well, and they hadn't followed that process. So there's both the administrative component about rules and then clear violation of state law as well.